Israel's dark prophecy. Is end times destruction imminent? Find out now. The news crackled into the air with the weight of a thunderstorm rolling in. As speculation ran wild, the words hovered like an ominous cloud. Israel, prophecy, end times. What did it all mean? People stared at their screens, hearts pounding, as images of burning skies and crumbling cities flashed across the feed. In that moment, reality felt distorted, as if the world was caught in a dangerously beautiful fever dream. Was this just a media frenzy? Or was something terrifying truly on the horizon? Strange things were happening. In Tel Aviv, citizens gathered, eyes wide with anxiety, murmuring among themselves. From Jerusalem came whispers of ancient texts coming to life, scrolls that spoke of chaos and resurrection. Even the birds seemed to sense the unnerving tension in the air, flying in erratic patterns, darting past each other as if warning of impending doom. And the sky? It turned an unsettling shade of orange, casting an eerie glow over the bustling streets, reflecting the growing unease in every heart. Reports of bizarre occurrences came filtering through. A fountain in Haifa flowed red, reminiscent of blood, shocking passers-by into stunned silence. While on the outskirts, old men gathered to study the stars, their eyes haunted, convinced they glimpsed a celestial warning. There was an unshakable belief that history was in the making, a moment that could redefine humanity's fate. The air felt thick, swirling with fear and the electric charge of chaos looming. But no sooner had these fears taken root than they were met with a surge of cyber chatter. The internet unraveled under the weight of these ominous claims. Videos exploded in popularity, cryptic symbols and murky rituals translated into sketches on social media. Everyone was trying to decipher the signs. Some claimed it was just another conspiracy, while others risked their credibility to uncover the truth. Conflicting emotions zigzagged through hearts, binding them together in a feverish urgency for answers. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon, and while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. With every click and scroll, a sense of overwhelming anticipation grew. People could hardly sleep, anxious for what each morning might bring. As crowds formed in parks and plazas, the murmur of hope mixed with despair, threatening to ignite the very air around them. What could possibly happen next? Questions hung in the air, unanswered. Were they on the brink of calamity? Or was there something more profound lurking beneath the surface? It was as if they stood on a precipice, ethereal and terrifying, and they were left wondering who would take the first step into the unknown. Darkness descended in Tel Aviv like a heavy blanket. The skyline looked daunting, silhouettes of buildings stretching toward that eerie orange sky. Clusters of people moved together in a tight knot, their voices rising in panicked whispers interspersed with cries for answers. There was an energy crackling in the air like a storm about to break. A woman stood at the heart of the crowd. Her name was Miriam, and she felt a tightness in her chest. A mother, a wife, she had spent years living with the mundane, the predictable. But tonight, that comfort felt like a distant memory. Instead, her heart raced as she looked around, frantically seeking guidance amid the chaos. Shadows lengthened, and the flickering streetlights only amplified her sense of dread. Is happening, isn't it? She heard someone mumble nearby. Heads nodded, murmurs intensified, but no one could answer. Panic spiraled, suffocating hope with real fear. As sirens blared in the distance, drawing closer, the crowd united in a tense anticipation. Was this a drill, or was it the signal of something much worse approaching? Miriam caught her breath, eyes darting to a nearby television in a storefront window. The screen displayed news anchors, faces pale as they relayed updates, their grim words echoing the grim atmosphere. Unprecedented events unfolding in Israel, one anchor proclaimed. The government has advised citizens to stay indoors. The very thought turned her stomach. What did that mean for her family? Her children, tucked away safely at home, were completely ignorant of the brewing storm outside. Would they be safe? Would they even realize the last time they experienced normalcy? In that moment of overwhelming worry, she spotted a man. Yosef, a local historian, pushed through the crowd, eyes alight with determination. He was known for his fervent discussions on ancient texts and prophecies, often ridiculed but undeniably knowledgeable. Miriam grabbed his arm. Yosef, you know something. Tell us what's happening. He looked at her, something approaching fear mingling with resolve in his eyes. Miriam, these events they mirror what's been foretold in old prophecies. The signs are all around us, but they've been dismissed too easily, he said, voice almost a whisper, like he feared being overheard. The blood in Haifa, the skies, this all aligns with the ancient texts. Miriam's heart sank. She had often laughed off those conversations, treating them as mere stories told to entertain, not as warnings of possible truths. The thought that myths could be coming alive sent shivers down her spine. Yes, we need to share this, she said. People won't believe it without proof. Yosef shook his head, uncertainty flashing across his face. It's not what they believe, it's what they will soon face. Fear can lead to chaos, and perhaps we're closer to something no one wants to acknowledge as chaos unfolded around them. Streaks of fear mingled with the darkness overhead. The crowd began to shift restlessly. A sudden explosion echoed in the distance, throwing flashlights and shadow play across terrified faces. The energy shifted. Panic rippled through the crowd. Yosef, voice rising above the murmurs now, shouted, "Everyone, we must gather information. Stand together. Don't let fear tear us apart." And just like that, his call ignited something within the people. They began to disperse, determined to unite, to search for answers. But as they moved, Miriam felt something. The ground beneath them trembled, an aftershock of the chaos, or perhaps something darker. In that moment, she realized she was caught between decisions: stay and fight for certainty or flee into the unknown. Each choice held the weight of fate. But she didn't have time to choose as a blinding flash lit the horizon, harsh and electric, obliterating her thoughts. What had they awakened? The skies roared, and then came silence, deep and consuming. Just as the dread settled within her, the ground shifted again beneath their feet. At that moment, everyone screamed, eyes widening as they stumbled together into the night. What awaited them in this darkness? Would they find the truth or the end? The ground continued to quake, a relentless reminder that Tel Aviv was no longer a city of routines and comfort. Miriam clutched Yosef's arm, her heart racing. A murmur of fear coursed through the crowd, turning voices into a chaotic symphony of panic. What now? Someone cried out, desperation lacing every word. Yosef hesitated, his eyes scanning the horizon that had momentarily blazed. We must reach higher ground. We can see better from there. He pulled Miriam close, his grip fierce enough to transmit his urgency. She nodded, though instinctively wanted to run back to her home. Around them, the crowd surged forward, drawn like moths to a flickering flame. Some stumbled, others cried out for loved ones. Families called each other's names, and the air felt thick with dread. The distant sirens merged into one oppressive note, a warning, a summons, a spell that was too loud to ignore. As they moved toward a nearby hill, Miriam couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The shadows danced with malice, bending with rhythms that teased at edges of reason, whispering secrets she longed to forget. It was as if the darkness understood the fear knifing through her mind, a primal fear of the unknown, of what lay lurking just beyond sight. Hand in hand, they fought through the throngs of terrified souls. Miriam's heart sank with the realization that each face around her wore the same fear, the same haunted look. Time felt twisted, like the night itself had conspired to elongate each moment. We need to hurry, Yosef urged, his voice slicing through the cacophony. Finally, they reached a clearing atop the hill, a raised platform where the city sprawled below, alive yet quaking under a veil of chaos. The lights flickered intermittently, like a pulsing heartbeat, and from this vantage point, they could see the fire blooming in the distance, a stark contrast against the frantic orange skies. "What is happening?" Miriam gasped, the sight washing over her a mix of horror and disbelief. A plume of smoke billowed skyward as though attempting to escape whatever horrors lay amid the streets she called home. Yosef retrieved a small radio from his pocket and flipped it on, each crackle pulling them further into despair. The static resolved into barely coherent updates, the anchor's voices trembling. Urgent orders from the government: evacuate east, gather supplies, stay away from the coast. Miriam gasped. The coast. Home was so close, yet so far. The streets swarmed with a fear she had only read about: natural disasters, apocalyptic warnings, but now it formed a tangible force, gripping her throat. "We need to warn people," she cried out. But Yosef shook his head. "Not everyone will understand," he murmured, a grim certainty shadowing his face. "Fear can bring out the worst in humanity." A chilling thought ghosted through her mind: what if they didn't just fear the darkness? What if they became it? The sky rumbled then, a low growl that felt like the world's heartbeat. Suddenly, a loud crack split the night, and Miriam turned her gaze to the horizon. A massive bolt of lightning arced, striking something below, illuminating the streets for a brief moment. It illuminated chaos. Yosef's breath caught as he pointed. "Is that?" Miriam's stomach dropped. The familiar shape of the old clock tower she'd seen every day was now engulfed in flames, the metal frame groaning under the strain. There was no mistaking it. This was an act of destruction, a foreboding echo of something that had long been prophesied. "Look!" a woman shouted from the crowd. "What is that?" Their eyes followed her outstretched arm. In the distance, dark shapes emerged, moving against the backdrop of fire and madness. People screamed, and as fear surged, she recognized them: figures cloaked in shadows, their movements fluid but unnatural. Drawing closer, the crowd began to panic again, shoving and pulling, confusion replacing the urgency that had once driven them forward. The night had birthed horrors between them and safety, and they could all feel it, a wall of malice looming just beyond reach. Miriam turned, her breath quickening. "What do we do?" But deep down, she had a haunting realization. They were no longer fleeing from nightfall, they were racing towards a confrontation. The very thing Yosef feared was upon them. "Stand your ground," he cried, rallying those who would listen. But would they listen? Would they stand? Or would fear drown them all? As the figures approached, Miriam's blood ran cold. This was only the beginning. What awaited them in this abyss? And who were those cloaked figures inching closer with every terrifying heartbeat? Miriam's heart thundered in her chest, a frantic drum echoing the chaos around her. Yosef's grip tightened, but she felt herself slipping away from him, drawn toward the shadows that danced hungrily at the edges of the hill. "Yosef, we have to move," she shouted over the clamor, but his eyes were locked onto the dark figures, faces pale and eyes wide with dread. As the shapes drew nearer, they morphed into something more horrid, something that made her blood freeze. They no longer appeared human. Their forms twisted in unnatural ways, limbs bending at sharp angles, cloaks billowing as though caught in a phantom wind. It was a nightmare come to life, breathing fear into the night. "Run!" Yosef finally shouted, breaking the spell of horror that held them captive. He tugged her hand, and they turned to flee, pushing past the thrumming crowd, now more like a mass of bodies pressed together in sheer terror. Shouts turned to cries, and each step beneath their feet felt heavier. The ground rumbled once more, a feral growl warning of discontent. "Where do we go?" Miriam gasped, instincts having abandoned logic. She searched for a safe path, but faces were twisted with panic, voices overlapping into confusion. "Toward the east. The government said to evacuate," Yosef replied, but even he appeared uncertain. A dread pooled in his eyes, mirroring her own. They veered off the main path into a narrow alley, the scent of smoke thickening the air as they fled the crowd. The buildings around them loomed, their walls mottled with age and a sense of foreboding, as if the very bricks were holding their breath. Miriam stole a glance behind. Her heart pounding against her ribs, more of those dark figures surged toward the crowd, weaving in and out like shadows slinking through the light they had momentarily stolen from the city. "Keep moving," Yosef urged, pulling her closer. Outside the bubble of terror, she could hear the sirens wailing even more insistently, a frantic chorus warning of the impending doom. But then Miriam caught sight of them again, those cloaked shapes darting through the chaos. They moved with a grace that should have been impossible. One stopped, locking eyes with her through the swirling panic, the faint outlines of a smile creeping along an otherwise featureless face. "No, no," she whispered, the horror of realization making her tremble. "Focus, Miriam," Yosef shouted, pulling her forward as she stood rooted in place. "You can't let it get into your head." But it was too late. Those eyes, that smile, they were etched into her mind, as if they had cast a spell of their own. Yosef's tug on her hand broke the trance, and she stumbled back into motion, heart racing amid the cacophony of fear-stricken voices. "Over there." Yosef pointed at a set of stairs leading up to a building crumbling under pressure but still standing against the darkness. "We'll get some height again." As they climbed, step by agonizing step, the tremors of the ground softened beneath their feet. From the top of the stairs, they could see beyond the chaos beautiful Tel Aviv, caught in a moment of unfortunate elegance, bathed in flame and shadow. The figures were everywhere now, moving through the wreckage like hunting wolves, faces shifting in and out of the flickering light. Miriam caught her breath, a lump forming in her throat. "What are they?" she whispered, fighting to comprehend the horror. "I don't know." Yosef's voice trailed off, fear flickering in his eyes. They reached the rooftop, the city below sprawling in chaos. "Look," Miriam gasped, pointing at the clock tower still aflame, its destruction a grim landmark against the horizon. But it wasn't just the terror of the night that struck her, it was the realization that something much darker was unfolding. There, hovering above the chaos like a storm cloud, was an ominous silhouette that cast its long shadow over the land. "This isn't just an earthquake," Yosef murmured, peering into the swirling dark. The truth settled like ice in her veins. "We need to warn others," she began, but her voice faltered. They could feel it now, the weight of dread and despair. Like a shroud, Miriam's breath hitched as the figures suddenly halted, a ripple of stillness overtaking the fervent chaos beneath them. They faced the rooftop, their hooded heads tilting as if sensing her gaze. The air thickened with something unholy. "What do they want?" Yosef whispered, fear weaving through his voice. Suddenly, a bone-chilling scream pierced the air, erupting from the center of the plaza below. A few seconds passed, then silence, the kind that envelopes the world when something truly evil is about to unfold. And in that oppressing stillness, it dawned on her the confrontation had shifted gears. The real question loomed. What would happen when the darkness decided to take its claim? "Come on," Yosef urged, grabbing her arm. "We have to get out of here. Now." But even as they turned to find another escape, darkness pressed closer, encroaching on their every thought and breath, holding them captive in this moment of unending dread. What lay ahead? And did escape even exist in a night like this? They scrambled across the rooftop, hearts pounding, driven by a primal urge to find safety. Every shadow stretched and danced in the flickering light of the burning city below, twisting into grotesque forms that seemed to mock their efforts. Yosef led the way, urgency fueling his every step, while Miriam's mind raced with questions that drowned out the chaos. What were those things? How had they come to be? And was it their fault that this horror was unleashed? Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from below. They paused, exchanging terrified glances. A nearby building had collapsed under the pressure. Dust and debris filled the air, brought up by the violent tremors that still rattled the ground. The city was falling apart, and within that chaos, something was stalking them. "We need to find a way down," Miriam urged, her voice raw with fear. "Look," Yosef pointed toward the far side of the rooftop, where an old fire escape clung precariously to the wall. "We can use that." They hurried toward it, the dread rising like bile in Miriam's throat. She cast a fleeting glance at the figures again, now closer, their movements quickening. They advanced through the wreckage with purpose, their heads tilting as if tasting the air for their prey. "Come on," Yosef shouted, grabbing the rusted metal ladder and testing its weight with a hard tug. It groaned under his grip, but it seemed sturdy enough. Miriam swallowed hard and pushed her fears down. They had to get down and out of this hell. As Yosef descended, every creak gave her chills, but there was no time to lose. She followed, her hands shaking as she clutched the rungs. The ground was rough and uneven, littered with debris from the fallen structures. They had nearly reached the last step when the weight of the night crushed in on them with an unyielding force. A thunderous roar erupted from the plaza, causing the earth to tremble violently beneath their feet. "What was that?" Miriam gasped, the adrenaline pumping through her veins. Something large was moving, something that made the darkness writhe and fragment. Her heart threatened to escape her chest, and panic clawed at her throat. Yosef tensed beside her, his eyes darting wildly. "Keep moving," he shouted. They finally hit the street, but as soon as they did, the ground heaved again, a continuous convulsion that sent them sprawling to their knees. The figures were upon them, surrounding the area, gliding unnaturally through the dust and chaos. Just then, one of them stepped nearer, its face now partially visible, a haunting void that felt like it was sucking the warmth from the air. "No," Miriam gasped, scrambling backward. "What do you want?" Yosef grabbed her hand tightly, dragging her away from the encroaching shadows. "We'll find safety in my apartment. It has a reinforced door." His urgency became palpable, but the truth hung heavy between them. Could they truly escape? They dodged between crumbling buildings, each footfall heavy with uncertainty, the creeping awareness that they were no longer alone gnawing at their sanity. The screams of others echoed through the alleyways, played out like a gruesome symphony of despair. "Keep going," Yosef urged, pulling her forward as they veered into another narrow passage. The figures felt closer now, their whispers slithering through her mind, weaving a dark tapestry of dread and thought. Without warning, a figure lunged through the haze, seizing Yosef's arm. It moved swiftly, the same grin of twisted delight breaking through its hood. Yosef yanked away, horror etched on his face, but the creature persisted, rustling through the air like a malevolent gale. "Run," he yelled, pushing Miriam ahead. She felt the raw heat of panic, instinct screaming at her to flee. Ahead, a shadow congealed into something darker. A far-off echo rang in her ears, a rumble that felt like it could tear everything asunder. Miriam's chest tightened as the fresh dread washed over her. They were caught between two rising tides of terror. What choice would they make when darkness called their names? New urgency surged through her body as she bolted forward, heart racing faster than her feet could carry her. In that moment of desperation, a thought flickered: what if the shadow creatures were not just there to consume, but to reveal? "Yosef!" she shouted. "Wait, what if we need to face them?" But was that really a possibility? As the shadows swirled closer, a chilling stillness descended, holding the answer just out of reach. Miriam's heart thundered in her chest, the word face ringing like a death knell in her mind. Could it be true? Was there more to these creatures than savagery? A flicker of something, hope, curiosity, pushed her to stop in her tracks, but Yosef kept pulling her forward. "No," he yelled, desperation coded in his voice. "We can't slow down. They'll kill us." But something was different now. The air felt thicker, charged with a static energy that made the hair on her arms stand on end. The shadows paused, as if processing her challenge, their twisted forms rippling. For a moment, they seemed less like monsters and more like something else. Something ancient. "What's happening?" Yosef voiced her fear, his grip tightening around her wrist as if she might slip away into the void. The creatures drew closer, their elongated limbs flowing gracefully through the haze. A low, resonant sound hummed from their depths, a language? Or perhaps a warning? "Listen," Miriam urged, trying to focus on the sounds, the whispers that oddly intertwined with her frayed nerves. "They're not just here to kill Yosef." He turned, eyes wide with a mix of fear and skepticism. shouting over the tumult. "What are you saying? You want to talk to them? Maybe they have a reason." Her voice trailed off, uncertainty flooding in. Was she really suggesting that they engage with the very beings that sparked the destruction around them? In that moment, one of the shadows surged forward, a chilling grace to its approach. Miriam's instincts screamed at her to flee, but she remained rooted, captivated by the figure's movement. It moved like a predator but felt different, almost curious. "Face them, Miriam," Yosef urged, pulling her back towards the alley. He was the anchor to her wavering strength. "We need to survive." But her voice rang out, firm and clear. "No, let us find out." Before she could gather her resolve, the shadow loomed over them, its presence almost enveloping them in darkness. The others hung back, an audience, as if they were waiting for the outcome, for her next move. "Speak," she shouted, more to herself than to the creature. "What do you want from us?" The shadow paused, seemingly contemplating her words. An unholy silence enveloped the street, the chaos around them sinking into a surreal hush. Yosef stood tense beside her, ready to bolt, but a part of him was caught in her resolve. Then, the shadow emitted a low growl, a sound that reverberated in her bones, a guttural articulation she felt deep in her core. It stepped closer, its void-like eyes glinting with an unsettling intelligence. Miriam understood the truth in that moment. The fear, the nightmare they lived in, was not merely for them to endure. It was a story woven from theirs and perhaps from long before them. "What if it's all connected?" she breathed out. The shadows shifted, and just like that, the ground trembled again. The earth rumbled beneath her feet, warning them once more of the approaching storm. But this time it felt different, more like a challenge than a fatal blow. "What are you saying?" Yosef's voice broke through, fear lacing each word. But it was too late. She had crossed a threshold, opened a door she could not close. The shadows descended upon them, a tidal wave of might, as a chorus of voices filled the air, blending whispers and roars, echoes of grief and anger. Miriam felt herself drawn in, the dark gravity of their presence wrapping around her like whispers of old prophecy, something only she could understand. "Yosef!" she yelled, searching for his face in the encroaching tide. But the shadows already surrounded them, their forms swirling into a dance, a promise of something unknown. What truth awaited them in the dark? Would they emerge transformed, or would this hold them forever in its grasp? As the shadows pulled tighter, binding the air with a palpable force, Miriam realized they stood on the brink of something far greater and more horrifying than they could have ever imagined. What dark revelations lay ahead, waiting to be uncovered? Miriam's breath hitched as the shadow that loomed closest to her began to pulse. The energy around them crackled, thickening in a way that felt alive, almost sentient. Her heart raced, caught between terror and an unexplainable connection to this entity, this being born of sheer darkness. "Stay close," Yosef demanded, his voice barely above a whisper, cracking under the weight of their hopelessness. But with every shimmering pulse, the shadows fractured, revealing flickers of light, visions, symbols, memories. She could almost discern a flow of images swirling within their depths, segments of lives lived long ago. Faces, anguished and hopeful, mingled with shadows of fear. The collective weight of centuries pressed against her consciousness. It was as if the shadows were fragments of a collective soul, pieced together by pain and longing. "What are you?" Miriam whispered, stepping forward, drawn to the pulsing energy like a moth to flame. The shadow tightened, a chaotic rhythm pulsing in time with her heart. Then, with a guttural sigh, the dark mass morphed, forming into a shape that seemed more defined, its grotesque features melding into a semblance of a face. It was fluid, shifting between monstrous and human-like, yet the intelligence she witnessed in those dark eyes was undeniable. A voice deep, echoing rumbled through the air. "We are those who lost everything and we remembered." "Remembered?" she stuttered, grappling with the weight of its words. "What do you want from us?" "Witness," it declared, its tone sharp as broken glass yet eerily inviting. "Your fate echoes ours." As the shadows thickened around them, a tempest of memories enveloped her, images bursting into her mind: destruction, loss, desperation. This was a cycle repeating, a story unending. Each pulse of the shadow revealed humanity's darkest moments, their triumphs snuffed out under the ancient weight of otherworldly sorrow. Yosef's hand shook against hers, his panic palpable as he gasped, "Miriam, this isn't what we came for. We need to escape." But escape no longer felt like an option. The pull of the shadow's narrative drowned out Yosef's pleas. She could feel the anguish, like a well of sorrow, beckoning her to understand. "Why show us this?" she asked, her voice trembling. "What could you possibly want from us?" "Understanding," the voice replied, resonating with unsettling clarity. "For too long you have turned your eyes from the suffering. If you embrace the truth, perhaps the cycle can finally be broken." A wave of despair washed over her, but beneath it simmered a spark of determination. Breaking the cycle, was that really possible? Could they, mere mortals, stand against the weight of a prophecy so deeply ingrained in the fabric of existence? Suddenly, the shadows began to pull back, retreating as if regrouping. The air changed, heavy with the remnants of what had transpired, and she sensed their impatience, their hope blending with dread. "No!" Yosef cried out, tearing at her sleeve. "Miriam, don't listen. They're playing with us." But it was too late. The shadows whirled in unison, reaching a crescendo that sent tremors through the ground again. Her surroundings began to dissolve into a chaotic storm of memories, voices overlapping, fragmenting into a cacophony that invoked a deep-seated fear. The ground shook violently, and Miriam fell to her knees, gripped by visions of those lost, echoes of betrayal, and shouts of warning. "Discover before the end comes again." The chorus of shadows roared, their voices merging into a singular, powerful demand, and then, just as abruptly, silence enveloped her. Miriam lifted her head, awareness flooding back as she fought to regain her bearings in an eerily quiet void. "Yosef?" she murmured, panic clawing at her chest. "Where are you?" But he didn't respond. The shadows that circled around her faded, leaving her alone in the overwhelming darkness, confronted by ghosts of the past she still barely understood. What had she stepped into? What truths had she awakened? With urgent dread, she realized this was only the beginning. As ominous whispers of the past faded, a chilling thought planted itself in her mind. What had her curiosity really unleashed? And how would they escape this dark reckoning that loomed ahead, ever closer to claiming them both? Miriam's heart raced, each beat echoing in the silence that surrounded her. The shadows had retreated, but their remnants left a suffocating tension hanging in the air. She struggled to push herself off the cold ground, her senses ablaze with confusion and fear. Where was Yosef? The echoes of his voice still reverberated in her ears, a haunting reminder of their shared plight. "Yosef," she called again, her voice trembling. She stumbled through the darkness, her hands brushing against the cool, uneven ground as she searched for any sign of him. Every footstep felt heavy, laden with dread as the void around her seemed to swallow sound. In the distance, a dim light flickered, a soft, pulsing glow that felt almost alive. It was both a beacon and a warning. Should she approach it? The memories the shadows had unleashed flashed before her, urging her to remember. Her instincts screamed to run in the opposite direction, yet something within her whispered that this was where she needed to go. As she moved closer, the light grew brighter, and shapes began to materialize around it, twisted silhouettes that shifted like smoke. Fear gripped her throat, tightening like a vice, but she pressed on, fighting against the instinct to turn and flee. "Where are you?" The words slipped from her mouth, almost a prayer, as she reached the source of illumination. It revealed a small circle, a constellation of soft lights swaying gently in the air. They seemed to vibrate in response to her presence, forming an ethereal array that left her breathless. In the center of the glow, symbols danced, ancient markings that felt oddly familiar yet terrifying. They spun and meshed, casting a ripple of unease deep within her. Then, out of the darkness, she saw him, Yosef, standing stiffly, his mouth slightly agape as if frozen in a moment of horror. "Miriam, don't move." "But I have to. We have to find out what this means." Her words were a desperate rush, an urge fueled by a sudden sense of purpose. "It's tempting you," he yelled, desperation edging sharp into his voice. "We need to get out of here now. This is dangerous." But something was unlocking inside her, a fierce desire to pierce through the veil of the unknown. "What if they can help us?" she urged, stepping closer to the pulsating symbols, feeling their energy radiate against her skin. "What if this is the key to breaking the cycle?" "You don't know that." Yosef's eyes were wide, reflecting the shimmering lights and fear intertwined. "You're playing a dangerous game." The glow brightened, casting shadows over their faces, charging the air with electric anticipation. The symbols began to twist in new formations, and a voice emerged from the light, soft yet commanding. "Seek the truth, dear child. It awaits," it beckoned, words wrapping around her like tendrils. Miriam felt an intense pull, a connection that felt both inviting and terrifying. The sensation washed over her, exposing layers of her soul she never knew existed. In that moment, she saw glimpses of those who had come before her, lives intertwined with pain and hope, their eyes pleading for recognition. "Stay back," Yosef shouted, lunging to reach her, but the force of the glowing symbols halted him in place. Panic flickered in his gaze as she turned to him, torn between two worlds, the unknown that flickered before her, and the companion who so desperately wanted to pull her back. Maybe this is the only way," she whispered, feeling a rush of resolve. "Maybe they're trying to help us understand." Before she could discern her next move, the symbols erupted, the light bursting forth like a supernova, swallowing her whole. Voices of the past coalesced into a frantic chorus, urging her to remember, to know what was yet to come. The sensation shifted. The ground beneath her felt unstable, as if the very foundation of reality was buckling. She gasped as shadows of her memories surged, pulling her into their depths. "Don't forget us," the chorus cried, their cries piercing through her consciousness as she tumbled into the light. And then darkness enveloped her, deep and absolute. In the void, Miriam opened her eyes, gasping for air. She found herself alone, but something had changed. In the silence, a chilling revelation began to sink in. She was no longer in the same realm. What had her choices unfurled? And were they truly prepared for what lay ahead? The echo of fate loomed, pressing down with a weight she couldn't fully comprehend. Suddenly, a shadow flickered at the edge of her vision, a figure barely visible but undeniably there. Miriam's breath caught in her throat. Could it be Yosef? Or something darker still? As she steadied herself, she knew one thing. Whatever had just happened would alter not just her destiny, but the fabric of their existence. Forever. The haze of disorientation lingered as Miriam's senses sharpened. She blinked against an otherworldly luminescence, struggling to gather her thoughts. The faint hum of energy pulsed around her, vibrating in rhythm with her heartbeat. Images from her life flashed within her mind, a fading photograph of childhood laughter, a face she longed to hold once again. But the familiar was overshadowed by a present danger looming all around. "Who's there?" she breathed, her voice trembling, uncertainty lacing her tone. The figure edged closer, becoming clearer, a man draped in shadows, features obscured by the ethereal glow. Fear twisted in her stomach, twisting knots of dread. Was this another specter trying to lead her astray? "Yosef?" she ventured, hope flickering like a dim candle. "No." The voice was deep, reverberating with a coldness that sent chills through her. "I am the keeper. You tread perilous ground, Miriam. The balance is delicate, and you must choose." "Choose?" she echoed, perplexed. "They seek to claim you," he warned. "They feed on desire, on fear. The light you sought for answers harbors a darkness that could consume the realms." A knot formed in her throat. Had she been foolish to step closer? Blinded by the promise of understanding? "What do you mean?" she demanded, defiance rising. "I only wanted to break free." The keeper stepped further into the light, revealing eyes like molten silver, intense and unwavering. "Breaking free can lead to destruction. Knowledge can be a curse. The shadows echo with the cries of those who came before you." Miriam's chest tightened. Those voices, had they been warning her all along? What happened to them? They sought truth, yet their thirst drove them into despair. He replied, a somber weight in his tone. They lost themselves to the shadow's embrace, becoming part of their hunger. Her heart raced. The stakes were higher than she imagined. It wasn't just about her, not just about Yosef. She felt the weight of generations pressing upon her. Faces flickered in her memory, pleading for her to understand. I can't go back, can I? She whispered, dread washing over her. If I turn away now you risk losing yourself entirely, the keeper said firmly. Embrace the truth, and it could be your salvation. Run, and you will only invite the darkness. What truth? She needed clarity, needed to make sense of this chaos. Tell me, please. A flicker of the light caught his eye, and he gestured to it. The circle of souls holds the answers. But be forewarned, the truth may unravel all you know. With a deep breath, she stepped towards the luminous circle, a sense of inevitability pulling her in. She could feel the energy sparking against her skin like static electricity. As she entered the glow, the symbols began to blur, their meanings twisting and intertwining. Whispers flared into a chaotic cacophony, overlapping echoes swirling around her. Suddenly, a vision struck her, a glimpse of a future where the shadows ruled, sowing despair in their wake. Faces of loved ones captured in horror, their cries fading into the void. And among them, Yosef. No, she yelled, instinctively reaching for him. Her voice resonated in a panic, but the light only grew blinding, enveloping her completely. Hold fast. The keeper's urging voice was drowned out by the rising tide of panic. Remember who you are. Miriam's breath quickened as she fought against the swirling energy, but the pull was relentless. The voices shifted from whispers to screams. Shadows engulfed her, a tempest of memories that tried to tear her apart. Then, in a fleeting moment of clarity, she saw it, a shimmering silhouette that pierced through the chaos. A truth she had not anticipated. A revelation that could reshape everything. Remember, she gasped, the visions pulling her deeper, filtering her thoughts through the shadows. But just as the clarity surged, so did the darkness, threatening to swallow her whole as the images collapsed into gloom. She understood one chilling fact. The past was never truly behind her. It loomed, intertwined with her present, waiting to strike. What will you choose, Miriam? The keeper's voice echoed faintly, a final plea amidst the chaos as everything faded to black. Would she dig deep enough to confront the horror of choice to reclaim existence? Or would she crumble before the shadows that still hungered? Time seemed to hang suspended, breathless, waiting for her answer. Miriam's heart raced as the shadows swirled around her, living nightmares that whispered promises of despair. The world felt fragile, like glass ready to shatter. What will you choose, Miriam? The keeper's voice echoed in her mind, heavy with the weight of destiny. But as panic threatened to swallow her, a flicker of hope ignited within. Just beyond the chaos danced glimpses of light, memories of laughter with her children, the warmth of Yosef's hand, moments of joy eclipsed by fear. The darkness loomed, threatening to push her deeper into the void, but she seized those memories like lifebuoys in a storm. I choose to remember, she screamed into the enveloping dark, feeling the urgency pulse through her veins. I won't let you consume me. In an instant, everything shifted. The shadows recoiled, their howling cries echoing in protest as the light surged around her, fierce, unwavering. The luminous symbols whirled, spinning into intricate patterns that wove together a tapestry of understanding. She felt the weight of the ancestors before her, their desperate longings merging with her resolve. They were not just echoes of the past. They were the ink of their fates still wet upon the pages of time. The keeper's form shimmered in the light, eyes glittering with approval. You stand at the threshold, Miriam. Embrace this truth and forge a different path. As the shadows writhed, Miriam pulled the memories closer, letting them guide her. She focused on her children. I'm coming back. She shouted into the void, feeling a rush of strength. Yosef's worried face flickered in and out of the chaos, and she yearned to return to him, to pull him back from the brink of despair. "Let us light the way to hope," she cried, and suddenly, the fears that paralyzed her transformed into a powerful beacon of warmth. The ground beneath her trembled, no longer a harmful convulsion, but a rhythmic pulse, resonating with her newfound strength. The shadows melted away, their anger dissipating like smoke in sunlight. And from the depths of despair, an unforeseen revelation broke free. The truth was not just what lay behind but also what lay within. "Together," she shouted, reaching with her mind and heart, finding Yosef amidst the swirling chaos. As their eyes met, she felt an exhilarating surge of connection. "We can break the cycle. We can fight for our future." Yosef's presence locked onto her words, igniting his own fire. "Yes, we can summon the light together." His voice roared through the tempest, pushing against the shadows. In that moment, they linked hands, their combined determination igniting something profound and real. The world around them transformed, the light spiraling outward until it washed over the city, chasing away the dark, revealing the stark reality of collapsing buildings and chaos, but also hope as the light expanded, casting golden rays upon the faces of frightened onlookers in the streets below. Miriam saw the fear begin to dissipate. With each pulse, the shadows-backed figures pulled away, as if the illumination had exposed them to the truth they could not bear. They thrashed against the onslaught, their cries fading as the light embraced the gathering crowds, uniting frightened souls into one collective force. "We are not alone," Miriam called out, her voice strengthened by the burgeoning hope. "The love we share can overcome this darkness." With each step towards that radiant unity, she witnessed her fellow citizens falling into line beside her and Yosef, fueled by their own memories, their own resistances. Together, they stood strong amid the night, a solid wall of light facing down the impending doom. And as they leaned into one another, Miriam felt the certainty settle in the shadows could not survive in the warmth of their light. Hours passed, or perhaps mere moments, it was impossible to tell. But slowly, the trembling ground calmed. Miriam opened her eyes, locking onto the horizon, drawn by the piercing orange sun beginning to rise. It pushed through the remnants of night, promising a new dawn. Beside her, Yosef breathed heavily, hope lining his expression. "We did it," he murmured, glancing at her, a smile breaking through the remnants of fear. They both could see it now, the remnants of their city, battered but not broken. People stood hand in hand, neighbors, friends, strangers turned into a family forged through adversity. Miriam swallowed hard, feeling the weight of what they had faced lifting. "We will rebuild," she said, voice steady. "Together, we'll honor those who came before us and protect those yet to come." As the first light of dawn transformed the skies from chaotic orange to hopeful gold, she felt the warmth seep into her soul, washing away last vestiges of fear. They hadn't just survived. They had transcended the darkness, reclaiming their narrative and ensuring that the cycles of despair would never again take hold. In that moment, Miriam understood. They had looked into the abyss, faced it down, and emerged with the power to choose love and community over fear and division. Together, they would write the stories yet to unfold, a vibrant tapestry of resilience, illuminating the world around them as the sun climbed higher. Illuminating the road ahead, Miriam and Yosef clasped hands, ready for the journey to come. This was their moment, their testament to survival. Together, they had rewoven the fabric of their fate. Now, it was time to carry that hope forward. If you loved this journey with Miriam and Yosef, you need to subscribe now. Don't wait even one more second to show your support. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. I want to hear your thoughts. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this incredible conclusion. And remember to instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this uplifting finale. Let us keep this community alive and thriving.